Hello there, and welcome to the Time Machine with Trish and Mike. I'm Mike.
And I'm Trish.
And one day you will be quicker than that and be on it. So quick. We've done so many shows, and there's always like a lag. What?
There's a lag? What do you mean?
Yeah, there's always like a lag. It seems like
you're Mike, and I go, and I'm Trish.
Yeah.
It's like always right away.
Maybe on your end it is, but it's like on my end, it always sounds like there's like a second or two delay. It's like,
oh, really?
I'm Mike. And I'm Trish.
Oh, no, I do it like right after you say it.
It must be the delay on my end. But folks, you know, if we're starting out crazy, it's going to be another wild ride. Anyway, we're glad you're with us. And I'm just giving Trish a hard time because, well,
that's a hard time. I'm doing my job, man.
That's what I have to do. So other than me giving you a hard time, how are you doing?
I'm good. Maybe there's a bit of a delay just because I'm so lazy and stuffed from Thanksgiving dinner last week.
There you go. That could be it, maybe.
I'm still trying to work it off.
Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I did. I mean, as good as one can during a pandemic.
Is that what we're calling it now?
There's all kinds. There's a panorama. Like there's so many things on TikTok that people are calling the pandemic, but we're pretty locked down here. So
keep me up to date on the TikTok verbiage.
I know I have to keep up all the teachers, all the old people about the youth.
Somebody has to.
Yeah, no, like cases here in Alberta are pretty bad, and so they said, you know, even with vaccination rates increasing, it's still you should just hang out with 2 families total, fully vaccinated, under 10 people. So it was me and my girls' dad and stepmom and our kids, and it was low key and it was nice. So
all right, so I got to ask this because obviously I'm not Canadian. What is it? Is it weird having Thanksgiving on a Monday? And I know that sounds like a really stupid question, but like it's at the end of a weekend, whereas here our Thanksgiving is on Thursday.
Right.
And a lot of people typically have the Friday off. So it's like you kind of have this 3-day week that you do, you know, whether you're working or going to school. Some schools now have the whole week off, but back in my day, we went to school 3 days and then you had Thursday and Friday off. So it's kind of like it's at the beginning of a long weekend, whereas for you, it's at the end of a long weekend. And I mean, I guess we get that with when Christmas is on a Monday or something here, but you know, I don't know. I'm just rambling.
It like works out. I think it's nice. Like for me growing up, it was a time where then, because we had like oftentimes school, you'd have Friday off, or you would just leave for your grandparents on Friday, right? You could be at one grandparents for like Friday, Saturday, and then another grandparents for like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then just come back home. So it kind of works out. Normally we would have our dinner on Sunday, but because of ensuring people are separate due to COVID, my girls had their cousins outside for like a weenie roast that had come up from Red Deer. So they were having their Sunday event with their stepmom's side. And then Monday we were having our thing. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I know we always have holidays on Mondays, like Labor Day, Memorial Day, that sort of thing. So it's not uncommon for us to have a holiday on a Monday, but none of those are really like big family events.
Right. Thanksgiving definitely has that like big family event feeling.
Right. Like if somebody's having a cookout for Labor Day, you know, it's kind of more casual. It's just somebody's, you know, grilling burgers and dogs or whatever, and that type of a thing. So it's of course
for me, it's just bonus sleep day.
Of course, it's like you would never know it otherwise because you've always had Thanksgiving on a Monday. So
yeah. But it's kind of funny to think about the perspective, though. And then for you guys,
it does change, you know, because it is different. Hey, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say for you guys, it's Columbus Day, or also I know some states go with Indigenous Day or First Nations Day.
So there's obviously over the last several years, as you know, some things about Christopher Columbus have came out. There's more of a push. Some people flat out want it to be renamed Indigenous Peoples Day, but there are a lot of places that recognize both. Regardless of what you call the day, I don't get the day off, so you know,
everybody can just, you know, get
Fight me.
lost.
Yeah, pretty much. If I get the day off, I'll call it whatever you want.
Yeah, because even I was shocked in Canada about every province except for I think New Brunswick, PEI, and Nova Scotia. It's actually like a statutory holiday off. Whereas growing up, schools, we always had it off in Nova Scotia. So I never thought about other people like, oh yeah, it's a holiday, but people like you having to go to work still.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bank holiday, so like the banks are closed and that
Right.
sort of thing. But it's
So
like,
it's really whether or not like your office wants to choose to be closed that day.
right, we have a weird thing in America with holidays because you have something like Columbus Day or Flag Day or whatever, where the banks are closed, but a lot of businesses are still open. And then we have something like Labor Day, where the people who labor for a living, like the blue collar jobs, often wind up still working on those days. And certainly like people in the service industry work on those days. It's like really they're the ones who should be having the day off. But
exactly.
oh well. It's interesting. But you can do a lot of things when you have a day off. You can read a book.
Yeah, you can read a book, which brings us to our very first segment for this episode, which is that C.S. Lewis is going to publish the novel The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, October 16th, 1950. I think most people know about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but if you don't, it's a fantasy novel by C.S. Lewis. It's follows the chronicles of these children in a mythical place called Narnia. It's over 7 novels. C.S. Lewis wrote it over 6 years. And it's among one of the most widely recognized books held in libraries. Now, of course, like I said, it's set in Narnia, a land of talking animals and mythical creatures. It's ruled by an evil white witch. In the famed story, 4 English children are relocated to a large old country house following a wartime evacuation. The youngest, Lucy, is the first child to go, and she visits Narnia a few times before her siblings join her. And it follows their adventures as they fulfill a prophecy of being crowned the children kings and queens of Narnia. So he wrote the book and dedicated actually to his goddaughter, Lucy Barfield. She was the daughter of Owen Barfield, Lewis's friend, teacher, advisor, and trustee. So pretty cool. I mean, I never knew that Lucy in the book was actually a real Lucy in real life. So that was kind of neat. And it's listed as one of the 100 best young adult books of all time.
Yeah.
So if you haven't read it, get on it.
Right. I'm sad to say that there's probably a lot of books on that top 100 list that I haven't read. Like I loved reading when I was a kid, but I got to a point probably in my 20s where I just stopped reading. And like I'll still read biographies because I'm fascinated by people, but I don't really read a lot of books.
I think for me, like I love reading. I'm the same as you. I escaped a lot in books as a kid. Like I was just a voracious reader, always at the library. But it's like your brain is almost too tired. For me anyway, with teaching and going into stories for my job, it's like, oh, my brain just can't handle another story.
Yeah, and maybe that's it. Maybe that's why, I'm just a dumb American, and it's like, okay, I'll wait for it to turn into a movie and then I'll watch it. But I mean,
but even haven't you noticed though, like even your viewing preferences have changed? Like I'm much more willing to sit down and watch a TV show, like 3 or 4 episodes at a time rather than one whole movie.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
I will do that. And I think because it kind of, I don't know that it's necessarily ADD, but it's something like that to where it's breaking it up. I'm not watching a 2-hour movie. I'm watching 4 30-minute shows. And in theory, I could stop at any time, after an episode. I don't have to watch 4 of them. I could watch 2 of them. But if I start a movie, I have to finish a movie.
Right. I'm the same way. There's no pausing in the middle of a movie and taking a break.
I mean, I'll get up and go to the restroom or something, but I'm not stopping a movie and finishing it the next night. I mean,
yes,
I'm
the same way. No,
but it's very hard to do. I think the last books I read were probably The Hunger Games.
Oh wow, that'd be a while ago. When they first came out, that'd be a while ago.
Well, when the movie first started.
Okay.
So like I got into the books then. So yeah, that's, like I said, probably longer than I'm willing to admit, but I think I just admitted it. So
the books are so much better than the movies. I say I don't read. And then actually I just finished the first book in the Arlo Finch series, which is another fantasy magical. And like, it's almost like this kid ends up moving to a town where magic exists because of this. It's called the Long Woods, where his city or town kind of rubs up against. So he's able to access the magic, but adults being further removed from like kind of the magicalness of childhood don't recognize magic. And there's a mystery where a girl has gone missing. And so it ties into the magic. So anyway, it was really good. It's written by, the name's escaping me, but it was the guy who wrote Big Fish, the script for Big Fish. Anyway, it's good. And then I'm working on the third book of the City of Ember series because I was reading it to my students and then I wanted to know the end of the story. The kids didn't want to know anymore, but I wanted to know. So I started reading it.
I read The Cat in the Hat. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I did like back in the day. And maybe some of it is I just haven't found the right genre of book to read. Maybe that's part of it because I'm not like a Lord of the Rings guy, so a lot of that stuff, that magical fairy stuff, doesn't appeal to me. And then if you say, well, okay, we'll go read like a Tom Clancy novel or something. Well, to me, like an action suspense thriller type that plays better into a movie for me. Than a book. So I think that's why I've settled on reading biographies.
Well, and also anything that I find too real, right, about right now, like the last 2 years, it's like, oh, I'm not interested. Like, I was a big Grey's Anatomy fan. And then I was waiting for the last season to come out on Netflix. Well, the last season's about COVID. And I'm watching it and I'm going, oh, this is far too real. Like this feels so depressing.
I have to commend you for getting caught up on like 15 seasons of Grey's Anatomy in less than a year. Because you just started this show. Yeah. I remember us having conversations back when you started it. And as
like in January, I think it's been less than a year.
Yeah. Holy crap. That's incredible.
You were like, oh, just wait until you get to like this season and this person. And I was like, okay, I'm still crying at it. So,
and Trish knows why I'm not a Jeffrey Dean Morgan fan.
I do now know.
Yeah.
But I thought as doing some of this research for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, I was actually shocked that he actually wrote a totally different book with different characters and everything.
Oh, really?
So, and I'm like, oh, I want to know. Apparently he burned it. So that's what I discovered, but he has a quote about it. But he said that he decided to write it all based on a picture. And he said, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe all began with a picture of a fawn carrying an umbrella and parcels in a snowy wood. And he's like, I've had this picture in my mind since I was about 16. And then one day when I'm about 40, I said to myself, let's try to make a story about it. And it was obviously influenced by children who were leaving the cities of Britain to go to the rural countryside during World War II. He actually had 3 school-age girls in 1939 come and live in his home. So Margaret, Mary, and Catherine, just outside of Oxford city center, they come and they live with him. And so he gets kind of inspired based on this picture and what's going on in the world. But actually, he said that he wrote a book about 4 children. So it's still 4 kids. Anne, Martin, Rose, and Peter. It's mostly about Peter, who's actually the youngest in this first original version, where he's actually the oldest in the book that we all know about. They had all gone away from London suddenly because of the air raids and because father, who was in the army, had gone off to war, and mother was doing some kind of war work, I'm assuming a nurse, and they're sent to stay with a kind of relation of mother's who was a very old professor who lived all by himself in the country. He wrote like the whole book, I guess. But he said in a letter, I have tried one myself, but it was by the unanimous verdict of my friends so bad that I destroyed it. So I'm like, oh no, like we have no record of this story. I would love to know about Peter the youngest and what the differences of the stories would be. I think that would be fascinating.
I'm sure at some point, because there's no original ideas anymore in Hollywood, somebody will just make this up just to make a movie out of it.
Probably.
Surprised it hasn't happened.
One, it would be interesting, like who actually takes up the mantle and maybe goes with it. Because I know there was a whole shamaz about who had the rights for the filming, which is why they stopped filming the movies.
Yeah, you kind of have to have that figured out because that's definitely a big part of it.
That's how you're going to make money. But it's been translated into 46 languages. adapted into 9 films, written as multiple stage plays and audiobooks. The 2005 movie, I think, is the one that most people would automatically think of. It had a budget of 180 million, and it actually made 745 million at the box office.
That's a good return on your investment right there.
It's very good. I prefer the old like BBC mini series because it used to play on CBC on Sunday nights, and my family and I would watch like that old version. I don't even know when it came out.
Welcome to Narnia.
But Liam Neeson as Aslan in the 2005 movie, perfect.
It's crazy to think that movie was 2005.
I know, right?
I swear that movie came out in like 2012.
Yeah, I'm actually really disappointed that they stopped making them because I was really excited for
that's the thing.
For what was going to come
when they came out, that it was going to be like one of the next big franchises.
Yeah,
because at that point, the Harry Potter franchise had gone on for a little while, Lord of the Rings had wrapped up, so this was going to be like the new fantasy franchise for a few years.
Well, and they did it so well. Like filmmakers jumped on the Aragon series, right, about the dragon, and the books are amazing. I personally really like them. They're really in depth, full of fantasy. Very much you can see the influence of Tolkien, but the movie is so garbage that like the books cannot even if they wanted to use the books as source material, they literally couldn't keep going because they changed so much and it's so badly done. The elves don't even have pointy ears.
Well, then they're not even elves,
right? No.
Isn't that like a requirement for an elf is to have pointy ears?
Well, and they like culturally appropriated so many things from the North American indigenous community that it was like, oh my God, this is on screen and someone thought this was okay. Like,
It goes back to our indigenous people conversation.
It all comes back around.
It does. What else comes back around is a roll of film.
That's true.
Since you talked about movies. And on October 14th, 1884,
whoa,
we're going back in the day here on this one. George Eastman received a patent for his new paper strip photographic film.
I'm sorry, did you say paper?
Paper strip photographic film. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So he had been working on trying to find a way to take pictures, and later on, he developed the Kodak camera. So that's where, people have probably heard of Eastman Kodak. That's where it comes from. Kodak was actually a word he made up.
Oh, really? It doesn't actually have it doesn't mean anything?
It doesn't mean anything, doesn't translate into anything that we're aware of. It's just a word that he made up.
Wow. It's not even an acronym.
Yeah. It just sounds kind of cool. And when that was the first camera to use roll film, because previous to that, film was like, when you go get an x-ray, how they have to change the film every time you take a picture. That's kind of how photography was prior to that. So now that you can take multiple shots in a camera, it speeds up the photo taking process. And in fact, his advertising slogan when he created the Kodak camera was, "You press the button and we do the rest."
That's pretty catchy.
Yeah. So a lot of people, they don't know how cameras and photography work, especially nowadays, because everything's digital. People take pictures on their iPhones, or, a lot of even photographers do things digitally. There's not, film is not what it once was, because technology is involved.
When was the last time you remember taking it to like a photo center to get developed?
I have to.
I think I was grade 10.
It's probably, I'd have to probably go back to high school or shortly thereafter, because at that point digital cameras started to become a thing. I've gotten prints made since then, but as far as
me too.
Actually taking a roll of film in, that has been a long time. So basically, the way a piece of film works is there's a base coat on one side with like a gelatin emulsion that has these small light sensitive silver crystals on them. And when it's exposed to light, that's where the image that you see through the camera lens, when the shutter opens, it sees that image. And that's what, once it's exposed to the light, some of the crystals will, change. And that's what gets your image.
Which is like really crazy to think about how you find this out and utilize it in this type of technology before the 1900s, right?
Right. Like, how do you figure this out then? How do you figure it out now?
Figure it out now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So here's
So when you said paper, I was thinking like flimsy, like white paper.
oh
But
yeah,
it's more just like flexible
Yeah.
film paper.
And obviously it's changed a bit. It would be interesting to see what his film strips look like versus what our film strips look today. Obviously, it's going to be, I'm sure, a little bit different because like back then everything was black and white. Now we have color film. Now color film works on a little bit of a similar process, but there's little differences to the quality of film. That's why you have to specialize in buying black and white film or color film when you're buying film. So you know this, Trish, and I think some of our listeners know I do photography a bit. What you don't know is I have actually developed film before.
Oh, and like a photo lab?
Yeah, like in a dark
with the
room
red light?
Yep.
Oh.
I have done all this. So would you like to learn how to do this?
I would, because I think it's really fascinating and I have never done it personally.
Okay. So I took photography in high school. I'd always wanted to take it. It just never worked out scheduling wise for me to take it. And there was a period of time where I'm sure they have summer school up there, right? Yeah. And typically summer school is usually like, you're repeating math or science or whatever. Well, there was a little period of time where we could take certain electives during the summer just to get extra, credits. And so I took photography and it was great. It was only like 2.5 weeks, but you're doing it for 8 hours a day.
Which is actually so smart because it keeps kids busy and engaged in learning over a summer break.
Yeah. Right? And it gives you something to do for a couple of weeks. So it was nice. So that's my only complaint was I didn't get to do it very long, but it was cool to learn because you learned all this sort of stuff. So what you do when you first, when you finish a roll of film, your camera either winds it up or, you spin the wheel and you wind. So that way the film is in the film canister. So then what you do is you have this changing bag. So it's this black bag, no light can get in. And there's like arm sleeves that you stick your arms in. Okay. Or you could technically do this in a pitch black room, but it's easier, I found, to do it in this bag. So you put your film canister in the bag. You put a developing tank, which we'll get to in a second, in the bag. Put your scissors in a bag, all that stuff. So everything's in there. Well, you may need the scissors if the film is, we'll get to it. So
I'm going to be like, okay, so everything's in a bag. Gotcha.
You can't see what you're doing, but you've got
I'm following.
You've got a sharp object in there, so don't cut your fingers off. So, well, before you put it in, so you put everything in and you crack open your film canister. Okay. So then you start, and you want to be careful with this because you don't want to touch the film. You want to handle it by the edges. In your little developing tank, which just think of it as like a cup with a lid, basically, because that's kind of what it is. I mean, it's a little heavier duty than that. And there's a couple of reels in there. So you take the film and you feel there's little like slider tabs, okay, that you start to guide the film in, and then you just twist the sides of it and you're kind of just like winding it around this reel. But the track on it is spaced out. So that way, like the film isn't touching itself. I hope I'm describing this well enough.
So there's like there's something protecting the film from rubbing against itself.
Right. Like there's a small gap between, think of it like the groove on a record, how really it's one continuous groove, but there's a slight gap in between the groove. So that way the next time it comes around, it doesn't run over the same sound.
Right. Okay. Sound. Yep. I get it.
I'm trying to explain this on a podcast. I hope you're following with me.
It's very visual. Explicit.
Like Trish can see me on video explaining this, but you're driving in your car and you can't see me. So anyway, so you do that, and then you have to, the film may still be attached to the canister. That's where the scissors come into play. Okay. So you need to, that way you can have it fully on the reel. You put the reel in this canister and you screw the lid on. Now the lid has a funnel top that goes in between the reel, so everything is fully closed at this, like it's light, it's dark. The film is not going to be exposed to light. All right. Okay. So now you can take your canister out of the bag. Now this is where the fun part begins. So
all that wasn't fun before?
Oh, that's
fumbling in the dark without seeing what you're doing in a bag.
You pretty much, other than maybe getting fingerprints on it, you really can't screw too much up yet.
Okay. Oh, I'm sure I could, but continue.
Well, if the lid's not on and there's light that gets in it, you're screwed. But so the first thing you have to do is you have to develop the film. So there's, like I said, there's a little funnel cap that goes in between the reels. So that's how you're able to pour chemicals in and out, without exposing the film. So you first have to use your developer. So you pour the developer chemical in there, and you have to kind of spin it around and agitate it, for a certain period. I forget all the time periods on this because it's been so long.
Right.
But so you put the developer in, and that develops the image. Okay. And so then you drain that out. Then you have to put the stop bath to stop the exposure from continuing to expose, because that, can
then
lead
you
to
end
a
up with
problem.
like white ghosty like images.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. So then you pour that out, and then you pour the fixer in, and that kind of fixes and locks in the image. Okay. Then you pour that out, and then you rinse it with water. At this point, your film is fully developed. It's perfectly safe. You can unscrew it. You take it out, you hang it out, you let it dry.
Oh, see, in my mind, I'm thinking of like the big, like the 8.5 by 11 baths. Where you would rinse the photo. Okay. So first you have to do all this.
Yes, you have to develop your film before you can make a photo.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I get you.
Now that our film is drying or has dried, now we get into actually making a photograph.
Because how do they make it go from, because like film, if you look at it, is very tiny, but you're able to get like 8.5 by 11 images.
Right. Well, that's the next step. That's where we're going next. All right. So now you're in the dark room, and this is what everybody thinks of with like the red light and the whole deal. I can tell you, it does take you a few minutes when you first go into a dark room to kind of adjust to the light. And so what you do is you take your film image and you put it on basically a projector that like shoots downward, like an overhead projector. Think of kind of like that. Okay. And you put
like
your film...
children born after the 90s. There was this device.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you put your film strip in this projector, and that's where you change you can raise it up or lower it. And that's how you get your different image. Do you want like a 5x7? Do you want an 8x10? So on and so forth. So you do that. And then once you've determined that, then you have to determine how long the image has to expose on the paper. So you do a little trial and error. There's different methods, but I've probably rambled about this way too long. But once you've determined how long you have to expose your image, that's when you put the photo paper in, you turn the projector on, it, projects the image on the paper, and then you wait for the timer, and then you shut it off. And then you basically do the same process. The chemicals are slightly different, but you have to develop the image, then you have to stop the image, then you have to fix and rinse the image, and voila.
And then you hang to dry, which is what we all see in movies. So that's fascinating that like they never show the projection part, just the like rinsing in a bath part. I'm like, oh, now a mystery has been solved. But you think about how expensive photography was too before the digital age, right?
Oh, yeah.
And people are like, why is photography so expensive? It's like, well, first of all, you're paying for the talent of the photographer. And
which
then
you're still do with photography now.
Yes. But like that's an added on to all these chemicals and the time of actually processing them.
Yeah. I figured you might find that interesting since I rambled on. But it was cool. It was neat to learn that, because it is, something unique that a lot of people kind of don't know how this happens, and that's how it happens.
Well, and things that are retro are coming back, right? Like records are now back in fashion. So who knows if this will?
I think film is coming back to a certain extent. I mean, it's I have a DSLR, so all my stuff's digital. Am I going to run out right now and buy a film camera? No, but
probably not.
If I had a chance to have some fun in a dark room again, I would do it in a heartbeat, because it was pretty cool to literally see something that you took from start to finish. I mean, I kind of get that now with photography, because I take an image and then I digitally edit it, and then I send it off to, the model or the client or whatever. But
it's different than that tactile feeling of actually manipulating the chemicals and
Exactly. So it's like, then I'm taking this picture literally out wherever. I come back, I develop the film, I've rolled this film, I've developed it, I take it out, I enlarge it, I put you literally do it start to finish.
You have birthed your baby.
Yes. Right? And I didn't have to take an epidural.
And you didn't have to take an epidural to do it.
Yeah.
Know who else probably would have enjoyed an epidural?
Anybody listening to me still rambling about photography?
I was going to say Queen Jane, who was one of the wives of King Henry VIII, but sure. Yeah.
Well, tell us about Queen Jane on another 2-minute tutor time with Trish. And I realized that wasn't the song, but whatever.
No,
No, what was it?
tisk tisk.
It
It
was
was to
Greensleeves,
Yeah,
right?
because King Henry VIII supposedly wrote it.
2-minute tutor time with Trish, or however it goes. I cannot think of what it's. Oh, Christmas Tree, right? No, that's Tannenbaum. What is
No, that's
Greensleeves? What
Tannenbaum.
child is this?
What child is this?
2-minute tutor time with Trish. I will know this by Christmas time. Go ahead.
Well, although it's actually a 2-minute tutor time about the long-awaited prince that King Henry VIII was desperately seeking. So October 15th, 1537, the long-awaited prince is christened. And his mother, Queen Jane, very pale, very ill, did rally enough to attend this christening. Now, of course, Jane's labor lasted for 2 days and 3 nights until finally on the 12th of October, she gives birth to a son. At the age of 47, King Henry VIII finally had a legitimate son and heir. And so he throws an amazing party, and he invites all the ambassadors from all the different countries to ensure that, all the countries of Christian Europe at this time are going to hear about this amazing birth of finally legitimizing his marriages and all that stuff. So it's this grand thing. Edward is christened, and it would go down in the record books as one of the most prestigious and magnificent events that ever took place at Hampton Court.
Are there photographs?
There are paintings. Does that count?
I wasn't there to photograph it. I'm just saying.
So no. And Henry even changed the baptismal font to make it huge so that everyone in the church could see. It was, propaganda at its extreme at this point. Tragically, though, Prince Edward's mother, Jane Seymour, is going to die 9 days later. So 12 days after giving birth. Most likely it was an infection of the womb, and her body is taken in 9 days before her son is paraded through the streets. And then 9 days later, she is paraded through the streets in the same kind of grandiose celebration of her life. King Henry VIII is going to go on to always say that she was the wife that he loved the most. And he always made a big to-do over her. And then, all of this parading and celebration isn't going to last forever because unfortunately the young prince is only going to live to be 15 and he dies tragically of tuberculosis. So all this, pain and suffering and waiting and then celebration only to have it not last very long.
Well, thank you for ending us on a bummer.
Sorry. I mean, it does allow Queen Mary to become queen, and then she tragically dies of a tumor. But then we get Queen Elizabeth I, who ushers in the golden age of Europe, of English, rule. So it ends happily that way.
There you go. And everybody lived happily ever after. The end.
Sorta. The end. See, I could have rambled a lot longer, but
Yeah, I didn't have the timer running. That's why.
I know.
I was like, I'll let her just go with it.
I could talk about it for a lot longer. I'm too nerdy for my own benefit.
You should read a book about that.
I don't even want you to know how many books I've read about the Tudors. It's a too large of amount for a normal person who doesn't actually have a degree in the specialization of this area.
And on that note,
yeah, I don't know where I'm going.
I don't either. It's time to do the thing, I think.
Time to do the thing. If you have any questions, concerns, queries, freakouts, you can find us on Instagram, The Time Machine with Trish and Mike, Gmail, The Time Machine with Trish and Mike @gmail.com. You can pop that into the old Google and find us on YouTube. And you can go to Anchor and you can actually leave us a message and maybe tell us, about your thoughts on Christopher Columbus Day, or if you've actually developed film or anything that we've brought up on this week's episode.
Yeah, so you could do that. And I got to add something. Okay, so I
forgot
rewind. So I forgot to mention this because sometimes as we're doing research on this show, you research a topic and that leads you down a rabbit hole to other things. So George Eastman, going back to him for a minute, he's the only person represented by 2 stars in the Hollywood Walk of Fame for recognizing the same achievement.
How come he got 2 stars for the same thing?
I don't know, but
Hollywood, what are you doing?
He did, because you have people who have multiple stars, because different categories that you get a star. You can get it for film, you can get it for radio, you can get it for live theater, you can get it for recording. So there's different, and there are multiple people who have stars in different categories, like whatever. And then you have some people like Gene Autry or somebody.
I was like, who's a singer and an actor? Like Lady Gaga could, right? Eventually.
She could, at some point. But like, and then you have people like Michael Jackson, who is in for music twice. He's in as Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, for example. Right. So you get that. But he's recognized for film, for developing, film. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, so
that's your bar trivia moment right there.
But wait, there's more. So that then led me down the rabbit hole of the Hollywood Walk of Fame. How much does it cost to get a star?
Like does the city of Hollywood pay for it, or like the person themselves?
So the way it works is people get submitted, anybody in the field of entertainment gets submitted to the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce Walk of Fame selection.
So we as an entertainment podcast, we could be nominated.
I don't know that they're putting podcast people in yet, but in theory, if somebody wanted to nominate us, they could. However, the nominee must have a minimum of 5 years experience in the category and a history of charitable contributions. So every June, the committee selects about 20 to 24 celebrities to receive stars on the Walk of Fame. And living recipients must agree to personally attend a presentation ceremony within 2 years of selection. So you have to commit to being there. I mean, if you're dead, then they do posthumous selections as well.
Right.
But if
that's kind of out of your hands.
Right. It's like, kind of can't be there because I'm kind of dead and I don't know about it. But so then you actually pay a fee of $50,000 to get a star.
What?
Yes.
This I never thought. I thought like it was just, you've done such an amazing contribution to entertainment. Here is a sign of our appreciation. $50,000.
Yes.
I was going to say maybe see us there in 5 years, Hollywood, but no dice after that.
Well, if somebody wants to sponsor it, and that's usually where these get covered. So the fee is usually paid by like a nominating committee or maybe a fan club or a film studio or a record label or broadcaster. Like maybe if you have a movie coming out, the movie studio might pay for because it's all for publicity. So yeah. Anyway.
No dice after $50,000.
Yeah. I would rather just have $50,000. So if anybody wants to just, donate that to me, I'll be happy to. I will do some good with it.
We'll do some good with it. I could think of a lot of good things I could do with $50,000.
Yeah. So I could too. Anyway, on that note, thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time right here on The Time Machine.